Ooh.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for joining us on this Chill with Jim episode where it is always business up top and pajamas at the bottom. I am your host. My name is Jim McCarthy, and I am the client advocate for Strix, Louisiana. My job is to make sure that our clients are set up with the best equipment, software, and IT solutions to help make sure that their businesses are running at optimal efficiency. We also have David DeArmond, the owner of Strix, with us.
Hey, everybody. I am David DeArmond, owner of Strix, Louisiana. And as owner, I guess it's my job to try to find all the puzzle pieces, stick them together in some sort of cohesive thing, and do a lot of pretending like I know what I'm doing.
He's really good at pretending, too, let me tell you. We do also have Candace DeArmond, who's another member of the Strix team with us.
Let's see, is my mic working today?
It's working.
Yay! Hi, everybody. We have a lot of new faces today, which...
Oh, there went the mic. See?
Spoke too soon.
All right. Yeah, we're having mic issues too.
That seems to be going around today.
All right. Well, she's another member of the team. We'll probably get her input in a little bit here. So a little bit about Strix. We believe that there is always a better, simpler, more secure way of doing just about everything. So what this means to us is we're constantly searching and adapting our processes to make sure that we have the best IT solutions in place. We believe that part of this responsibility is to help educate our clients as well as others the best resources that are out there right now. We bring awareness to security risks and just try to bring them up to speed with some of the things going on in the IT world today. What we like to do is we like to go ahead and bring in special guests that can help us all in some way, in some form, in our personal or business lives, and that's what we're doing today. We do have Cami Miller with us, and she is with NorthStar Coaching Systems. She has been a coach for me for almost 2 months now, and she's brought a lot of value to my life, opened up quite a few doors, and I'm noticing a big difference in the way that I approach every day, honestly. So I'll go ahead and let Cami give a little intro.
Okay. Thanks everybody who is on this call. My name's Cami Miller. I am a business coach. I started coaching in 1992 when a friend of mine walked into my office and told me that he needed a coach and he insisted that I coach him. At that time, I didn't know what a coach was, but we had been in a mastermind group together, and he had 2 companies and read an article about coaching and needed coaching. So finally, at his insistence, I agreed I'd coach him, quoted him a price, and after he left my office, I was the outpatient coordinator for a mental health unit. And so after he left my office, I started looking to see if I could figure out what coaching was, since I had agreed to do it. Since that time, I've taken lots and lots and lots of classes and developed my coaching skills. And one of the wonderful things about coaching is that it's something you can develop forever. I just recently, in the last 2 years, took an 18-month class, and my trainers were from Australia and South Africa. And it was a class that I've been wanting to take since 1999, never could afford it. And a friend of mine brought these 2 in to Baton Rouge to do a class, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity. In that course of development, of course, I've experimented with all my clients using the latest and greatest methods, and been, pleasantly surprised to see how powerful coaching is in a person's life. And I think there's a lot of reasons why it's so powerful, but I think questions are the main reason, and we'll talk some more about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Cami, for joining us. Thank you, everybody else who's on. we actually went ahead and gave the topic for today as unlocking your inner champion. And we're going to be discussing kind of the coaching process in general. We're going to dive into ways that Cami helps her clients unlock that inner champion, and just pretty much have an open discussion after that. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We are going to go through some preliminary questions. So some of those questions might answer your question, and if not, we'll go into 15 or 20 minutes of open discussion where we can ask those questions that we have. We can interact with anyone on the call and just get a good flow of information going. So Cami, if you could just tell us a little bit about maybe some of the steps you generally take with a client when you're starting the coaching process.
Okay. Initially, the most important thing is that I can create good rapport with the client. Coaching is more effective, faster, if I have rapport with the client. If they trust me, then they're going to be willing to stretch. They're going to be willing to push themselves a little more. And so sometimes that involves, just having some conversations about where they're from, helping them understand me and who I am, and given enough time that the client can understand that I am all about them. So coaching is not about me at all. It's about the client, what they want, and how to get them that result. And so I use a very simple formula, and it's called the who, what, how formula. So we identify who is the client and what do they want and how can they get there. And the who goes beyond who they are right now to who do they need to be to get what they want and to accomplish that how. Jim's like, I didn't know that.
Except for you're working it through me this whole time. I just didn't know
you recognize it when I say it, but
yeah.
And so if we start with the who, then we're much more likely to have success. And it's not hard work. It's about basically becoming who you're really meant to be. So I have to take enough time to get a better understanding of that from the client. But also, my form of coaching is I absolutely do not want it to be about me. And masterful coaching could be when the client says, we did it. But mainly I want the client to say, I did it. That the client themselves did it, because I might be a guide, but I'm not doing the work. The client is doing the work.
Wow. Great opening, powerful stuff there. I love it. We had this question here. Do you do both business and personal coaching? Do you offer both?
I do, Jim. I have a background in psychiatry. And there are times where someone will have a psychiatric issue, but I don't do therapy. So gotcha. I have clients who are seeing a therapist and a coach. Okay. And so I have a very clear understanding of where is their scope and what's my scope. But the truth is, whether it's personal or business, all coaching is personal coaching. I've never coached someone in business that didn't have personal issues that needed some adjustment as well.
That's great. Yeah, I already knew the answer to the question because I've signed up for personal coaching with Cami, but I've learned along the process is I'm not only getting personal coaching. It's helping me through business, through Strix. It's helping me in so many different areas of my life. So that's one thing I found interesting with the personal coaching, is it's really led to business coaching as well.
You can't elevate who you are without elevating everything that touches.
Nice. So what are some of the benefits your clients will notice while they're working with you as a coach?
Well, it's a great question, because I am one of not very many coaches that doesn't have a specific niche. I don't I coach family businesses, but I'm not exclusive to family businesses. You know, I coach executives, but I also coach entrepreneurs. And so the benefits are all over the board. I've helped people go through childbirth without, natural childbirth, and I've helped people open companies, and I've helped people grow their companies. There's just a few key questions in life that are really significant. And for me, the first one is, am I happy? And if my clients aren't happy, then let's figure that out. I've had people come to me and they were fed up with their jobs. They were, on the verge of quitting. And we sat down and talked once or twice, and they realized that really it wasn't the job. It was, how they were approaching the job, how they were seeing the job. Maybe they felt trapped. And so they weren't having the feeling of satisfaction because they didn't feel like they were at choice. And I had one guy call, he said, "What'd you do to my wife?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, "Well, she was going to quit her job, and now she says she's happy there. And you only talked to her once." And I said, well, we just looked at what would come about if all that happened. With entrepreneurs, some of the more specific things that I do is I help with focus. When they have that next great idea, I help them not get distracted by it. You can pursue that next great idea, but let's get this on rails running before you stop giving it your attention. And with entrepreneurs, I have to do that in a way that they don't get bored with what they're currently doing, that it stays, juicy and exciting. And some people are great idea people, but the world is full of ideas. It's execution. That's the challenge. So mostly with almost every client, I help them to dig deeper. So if they're doing, whether they're doing a halfway job or whether they're working hard, we find out, can you work smarter and have more to offer? What would motivate you to give a little extra or to push a little harder? If what you're doing isn't feeding you, isn't feeding your soul, then you don't have as much to give.
Cami, if you don't mind me asking, I'm curious, how do you know the difference when you're talking with someone between when it's time for them to persevere through something versus when it's time to cut bait and change course? How do you kind of pick up on what's the right direction to go?
That's a great question, David, because in many cases, people will get to what I call the edge of the river, and their joy in life, their happiness, their satisfaction is on the other side of the river. And so if that's the case, then I help them navigate that river so they can get to that other side. If that destination that they've been trying to get to is not going to bring them joy or satisfaction, we work through that and we talk about, why is it that you decided you wanted that? Because sometimes a person will want a PhD and they spend 7 years, they still don't have a PhD. There's something underneath that. Let's find out if you're doing that because your dad wanted you to, and he's been gone 3 years and you're still, knocking your head against the wall. I've worked with people who are in careers that they hate, but they don't want to leave them. I worked with a CPA one time and he hated crunching numbers, but he was, trying to push to be, a better CPA. And I said, why did you even become a CPA in the first place? And he said, well, I was good with numbers. He said, but I don't like them. So we talked for a while and he really liked people, which is very unusual for a CPA. No offense intended. And so we came up with a plan for him to propose to his partners. He couldn't leave the firm because he was a partner and it was a big firm. So it would be very difficult for him to regain where he was at that point. And so he proposed to his partners that he did the marketing for the firm because they had capacity that they hadn't filled. And that during tax time, he would crunch numbers, but the rest of the year he would do marketing. And he got a little resistance from a couple of the partners, but the older partner thought it might be a good idea and agreed. And the first client he brought in, and this was within 3 weeks, was the city of Baton Rouge. So for him, he was never going to decide he loved numbers. But he got great value out of working with people, talking to people, and he became incredibly valuable for the firm through tapping into his value. So if the client is working towards something that's really not congruent with who they are or who they want to be, then it's a different conversation than if they're just hitting a barrier.
Yeah, good question. Good answer. Wow. It's kind of, and I like the visual about the river. That's a great, I'm a very visual person, so that helps a lot. And I know you've gone over a lot already, but what are some of the main keys to unlocking someone's inner champion?
All right. Well, most people have a champion within them. I won't say that everyone does. There are people who in life haven't even had the opportunity to believe in themselves. And so the chances of them tapping into their inner champion are lower. When you watch people striving, it's not about necessarily what opportunities you've had in your life. It's about what do you have inside. So I have 3 things that I think, actually 4, that are important to tap into the inner champion. The first is belief, and sometimes people's belief in themselves is low, but their belief in their mission is high. And so we utilize that belief in their mission to raise their belief. All right. The second is capability. I'm never going to be in the NBA. Doesn't matter how much I love basketball. I'm 5'4". Chances and a little older than the average NBA player.
I think you should.
So is the capability there? And not so much do you already know what you need to know, but is it possible for you to achieve the goal you want to achieve? The third is action. And for example, if I wanted to open a bar right now, the action to be successful in that endeavor is not possible. So what I would do with a client that wanted to open a bar is we would put together some kind of incredible plan so that when bars did open, the bar could allow for social distancing. In fact, there's a bar right now that's changing their design so that most of the bar is outside. And it's a reaction to what they anticipate the regulations are going to be. But I think it's probably a smart strategy as long as they get the rain and heat taken care of. And then the last thing is success. When people succeed, they feel like a champion. That is the championship moment. And you can watch little kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, and when they achieve something that's really great, they throw their hands up in the air, and they're just they do the same thing that somebody in their 40s when they make a great achievement does. It is inborn in people.
Wow. Yeah. So I wrote all 4 of those down. I'm keeping notes here because
there will be a test, Jim.
Everybody, just so you know, there will be a test at the end. So no, that's great. So and you've talked about it some, but like it sounds like you get really deep with engagement with your clients. Like is that going to be the same engagement you get with them if they're doing business coaching, or if they're doing personal coaching? Is it a little bit different, or are you just head on in to really figuring out who these people are?
Well, it does depend on the client.
Okay.
Like I have an engagement with a large company, and the company pays for the coaching, but the coaching is business coaching, and the company is okay with me doing personal coaching with them as well, because they believe that if they're better, their lives work better, they're going to be more productive, more successful. But the individuals, a lot of them are engineers, feel guilty when they do anything personal because the company is paying for it. All right. So we have to establish the value that they bring to the company. And Jim, I'm not even sure I answered your question, but that's what.
No, I think you definitely touched on what we're getting towards there, and then and I'm sure it's on people's minds, and we had quite a few people ask it. But having a business coach, will it help my business's revenue?
Well, that's really the reason that people hire a business coach initially. And I will say that typically that's one of the ways I measure success of a coaching engagement is revenue. Satisfaction is the number one way, but revenue is a real strict indicator. And sometimes when I talk to corporate clients, we talk about, okay, if these things happen, how much is that going to boost your revenue? And when they look at where their revenue is going to boost to compared to what they're paying for coaching, the investment seems very small. My probably biggest increase was a client that had a weight loss center, and they increased their revenue. They quadrupled their revenue. When I was teaching networking and coaching, I had a guarantee of doubling revenue. As long as people did what I told them to do.
Yeah, Kimmy, what are those skills that you're teaching people, that you're coaching them through that leads to revenue?
Well, David, it depends on that individual. Where is that individual struggling? Maybe they're doing a lot of networking, but they're not making connections. Maybe they're disorganized. Perhaps really common in the entrepreneur world, the owner is doing everything, and the owner should not be doing anything but running the business and making connections. So, a lot of times it's not so much you need to be doing this as you need to stop doing this. So you have more time to do these things that are of value. The smaller the company, typically the more challenge I have helping the owners realize that there are people who can do that, that can free you up to do what only you can do. Sometimes people will be working their company, but they don't have systems. So every day they're reinventing the wheel. So I'll help them create systems so that anybody can do that task, because you have a system to make sure it's done right. And so just putting that company as much as we can on rails so it goes where you want it to go without you having to steer it the whole way.
All right, David, good question. And we encourage anybody that has questions like this, just hop on in. We got through quite a few of our prelims, but if you're itching at it, just come on in. I think, Lori, you just unmuted yourself.
Cami, I have a question. So have you ever dealt with somebody that came out and said they wanted coaching only to find out they were maybe not coachable? And if so, how did you handle that?
That's a great question, Lori, because I have had some people, there's very few people that I believe are uncoachable, but there are people invested in not changing. And then there are people who want you to coach them and fail so they can say, oh, I tried that, it didn't work. So very early, in fact, most of the time I don't even agree to coach those individuals. I've in the interview process, they think they're interviewing me, but I'm actually interviewing them, because my reputation is much better if I only coach people that can be successful.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense.
So if somebody wants coaching, I'm like, look, you can coach with this other person. They don't charge as much as I do, and I think they suit your style better. I actually had a coach one time tell me, she said, well, how do you work with your clients? She hadn't done any training. She just appointed herself a coach. And she said, well, how do you work with your clients? And I said, well, my goal is for my clients not to need me. For my clients to be able to say, well, what would Cami tell me? And then just go do it.
Right.
And she goes, oh, well, my goal is for my clients to really need me so that I can have them for a long, long time, make a lot of money. And I was just like, bye, Felicia.
Good question, Lori. Good question. I know you talked about it before, but yeah, having people that take your coaching services and then just don't do any of the work that you've told them to do. That's got to be a tough one to crack.
Well, sometimes, Jim, it's because they're performing for someone who is not present. So they think they need to do this, or they're criticizing themselves for not doing something when in fact they didn't want to do it in the first place. They just thought they should do it. I know when the shutdown happened in March, I have this big to-do list of things I'm going to do someday. So I started looking at that and I was like, I don't really want to do that. Now that I have time to do it, I don't want to do it. So I crossed it off the list. And I think a lot of times we're doing things because we think we should. And coaching can help people discern whether that's something you really want to do or whether it's something left over from somebody that might not even still be alive.
Okay. Understandable. So, okay, let's get into a little bit more about, let's say I'm a business. I love what you're talking about. And so I want to hire you. What are some of the ways I can help you help me and my company?
Well, I expect my clients to work hard so that they can get more. And so if I give them an assessment to do, I expect them to do it honestly. They're not paying me so that they please me or impress me. They're paying me for results. And sometimes they'll do an assessment and I'm like, jokingly, I'll say, who did this assessment? And they go, well, I did. And I'm like, but this isn't you. And then they'll, so I said, let's do it over. Actually, I have one assessment and the software will kick them out if they don't answer honestly. And it sends me a note that says, this person is very stressed. We suggest that you redo this assessment at a time that they're not as stressed. And almost always that person is trying to impress me with who they are and not answering the questions honestly. When I make a request of a client, I expect one of three things. I expect them to accept the request and say they'll do what I ask them to do, or reject the request and say, I'm not doing that, or to negotiate the request and say, well, if I did this and this instead of that, would that work? So they have to participate. And everything I do with a client isn't golden, but if the client and I work together, it becomes golden.
Nice. I think we had Jen, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, it kind of is going off of your question, but do you have like a set process once you are trying to onboard someone? I know you did the DISC test, but is it kind of, you follow the same process of how that coaching looks, or is it different for what they're looking for, or each individual person?
I have a process that I use, and I typically use it with everybody except the promoters. People who are all about fun don't like processes very much. So I typically get the information that's on the intake packet just in conversation. So they don't have to fill out forms. And I do have one form that allows people to select some goals they want to work on. And I'll usually ask the person to do that. But all the stuff about, what they wanted to be when they were 9 years old, those types of things, we just do that in conversation. Whereas with some styles, I can send that and they send it back, within hours, completed, and they actually like the structure of that. So it is personalized, and I have probably 20 or 30 different types of assessments based on what that person wants to accomplish. One of the most important ones, I don't even use the disc with everyone because I typically know their style by the interview. I mean, I can almost watch somebody park in a parking lot and tell you what style they are. And so, but it sometimes is valuable for that individual to see, this is why I have conflicts with these types of people, or this is why this is such a challenge. And then I do it with businesses. I have tomorrow I have a mortgage company I'm doing a disc class for. And everybody took the disc, and then I'm going to talk to them about the different styles so they can talk to customers in the language of the customer. And so it creates a more powerful communication skill for people. The other one that I think is most important is the true values profile. And that is, what is most important to that individual? If achievement is important to them, then we focus a lot on achievement. So we pick the top 4 or 5 values so that we can make sure that that person strengthens who they are. And if your life supports your values, you're going to be happy.
Makes sense.
Thanks for hopping in, Jen. I'm laughing a lot here because when I sat down for the first time with Cami and we talked about some things, and she circled back to something and was like, well, you don't really want to do that, do you? And I was like, well, how do you know? She's like, your body language told me everything I wanted to know. And I'm like, no, because I knew you were, you had told me in B&I before, like, you're good with the body language. And actually David's another one who's really good with body language. So I thought I was being all smooth, but you knew
It's
exactly.
funny. I had a client one time, and his father was an attorney, and he had gone to school to be an engineer, which was an honorable vocation. And then he decided to be an entrepreneur. And his parents were not happy that they had spent all this money sending him to college, and now he's going to open his own business. And he had some dysfunctions in his family, and we were talking, and I looked at him, and his body posture was skewed. His toes were pigeon-toed, and he was it looked very uncomfortable. And I said, well, why do you stay in this situation? And he goes, I guess it's comfortable. And I said, well, look at your body. And he looked and he goes, oh. And I said, it's not comfortable, it's familiar. And there is a difference.
I love that.
So, Cami, when someone is interested in becoming a better person, a lot of people pick up books, they listen to podcasts, that sort of thing, and they're kind of struggling to get to that next step. They just need maybe a little win, that success that you're talking about, so that they can raise their hands. And it may be different for every person, but what's a good first step for someone to take? Just that little baby step, so that they can start building up some momentum. Is there something you can suggest there to really start driving someone toward being a champion?
You know, it's interesting, David. I've worked with a lot of people who were ravenous consumers of information. You know, they were podcasts, books, just whatever they could find out. And what I learned in that regard is that they're looking for answers. In many cases, the answer is not out there. You know, the answer is in here. And so they don't need answers, they need questions that will pull those answers out of them. And that's part of the belief step. And it's part of that confidence that's so important. You know, when you say, I know how to do this, I don't need Dan Kennedy, I don't need anybody, you know, Michael Hyatt, I know how to do this. Doesn't mean that you're not open to information, you're not open to enriching your knowledge. But when you think that answers are external, it can be dangerous.
That's a great point. You
Cami,
know, go ahead.
I just have one more question for Cami, and I just thought it'd be a great question for the group. I know she and I kind of discussed that in our last one-to-one, but typically if someone is looking to get coaching, how many sessions does it take on an average basis? And then I know you said normally you want your clients to not want you or not need you anymore, not want you, but about how long does that take to get to that point from beginning to end?
Well, about 20 years. Actually, when I sign a client up, we sign an agreement for 6 months. And 6 months is typically 24 sessions. All right. Now, at any time, and it depends on what the client wants as well. But any time during that 6 months, if they feel like they've gotten what they needed, or they want to take a break, or they don't like coaching with me, they can leave. It's not a solid contract. It's just what happens sometimes is that about 3 months, sometimes 3.5 months, big changes start happening. And some clients go, oh my God, I don't know if I signed up for this much change. And we're headed to where they want to be, but they get a little scared. And so that 6 months pulls them through that little fear period, and then we can get them what they need. The other thing that happens sometimes, I had a client that approached me in 2008. She was becoming the executive director of a nonprofit, and she was a new executive director. She wanted some coaching. So we coached for maybe almost a year, maybe a little more even. And recently she called and said, you know, I'm not feeling as enthusiastic as I was. I think we need to coach some more. So that's a long time from 2008 to 2020. But it was awesome to me because it reinforced what we had done in the first place. You know, I have a realtor I coached in 1997, and she still comes around and says, can I buy a couple hours of your time? I'm like, sure, no problem. So what I try to do is I try to help the client maintain whatever their pace is. Because I discovered very early in my coaching career that I can easily overwhelm somebody. Read these 16 books and, you know, do this, and then so we have to go at the client's pace. My pace is not going to suit the client. And so for some clients, we're going to get great results in 3 or 4 months. Some clients, it's going to take us a year. I had a client recently that I had coached, over the last couple of years. I had coached her for 9 months on an engagement, and she got she didn't get a job she wanted that was a big promotion, but she got another assignment that she wanted that was a big step. And so she decided that she wanted some more coaching. And so when they asked her who she wanted to coach with, she goes, I don't have to go over all that with Cami. Let me just bring her back and we can pick up where I left off. And so I just finished another year with her. And so it's very individual. But sometimes, not a lot of times, but sometimes I say, okay, I think we're done. And they're like, no. I'm like, yeah, we're done. Let's take a break. And then, you know, if your situation changes or if you have something specific you need, we'll pick back up. But we're really not progressing here because you've reached a point where you've leveled off, and that's okay. And I had one lady in one company who was not listening. And I would say, okay, you know, what are you doing? Here's what we're doing. And I'd hear feedback. And finally, she got an extension, then she wanted another extension. And I told her boss, I'm like, I don't recommend another extension. She's not working. You know, Jim said, you got to work. And so he looked at me because this company pays a lot of money for coaching. And so he was surprised that I was saying, I'm not interested in that money. I'm interested in client success. So we stopped. And in the end, that person ended up getting terminated because the changes that needed to be made, she wouldn't make them.
Cami, we had a comment here from Brad, and I'd like to dig into that a little bit. He said that he's a fan of DISC. They use it at QRI where he works, and he said they share the DISC results within the company so that the employees know how to work better. Brad, I'm curious, and then to get Cami's input as well. When you initially shared those results, was there some kickback? Was there some maybe uncomfortable conversations there at the beginning?
When they first shared them, I actually wasn't here. That was before my time. But there wasn't really any kickback. In fact, some of the employees that were here, they actually have the disc printed out, and it's it's on their wall right beside them. So it helps, especially if you walk in and go, oh, this person is a DI, or it just kind of helps you know how to communicate.
Is that what you typically see, Cami?
It's interesting, David. It's a tool. It's not a weapon, but it can be used as a weapon, just like a knife can be a tool or a weapon. A lot of companies that use it and use it well encourage everybody to communicate with each other in that language of DISC. And the adaptation is a way of honoring each other. So if I'm going to communicate with somebody that's very cautious and conscientious, I'm going to slow my speech down a little bit. I'm going to make sure that I have proof of whatever I'm saying, or at least can cite my sources. And I don't expect them to believe me at face value. At BASF, they have little blocks and they stack them up so that their primary style is on the top, then their secondary style is next, and then on down. So when you walk in somebody's office, you can look at this little stack of blocks on their desk and know what their styles are. I think it's maybe Chevron, where the name tag is like a little man, and the shirt is the first style and the pants are the second style. Some companies on their door, they have an indicator of what their style, that person's style is. There's not a good or a bad style. So it's important not to think that any style has negatives. If you have too much of a style, there can be a negative around that. Or if you're stressed, you can come out with some negatives. But the style itself, as a standalone, is not a negative. The other thing to remember, and I'm sure Brad will agree with this, is that DISC is behavior. So typically, it just confirms what we're already seeing. It's not like, oh my God, you're this. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. Also, the DISC is just a thin cross-section of who that person is. So their beliefs, their culture, their religion, their experiences, everything is part of who they are. And so I get frustrated sometimes when a company will say, oh, he's just a D. I'm like, hold it. He's a lot more than a D. But his D behavior, if it's taken to the extreme, could be a problem. Let's address that. I worked for a hospital one time and we did DISC, and everybody but me were nurturers. And it sort of explained why we couldn't get anything done. Because I was a promoter, so I was all about talking about it. And they were, just doers, and there was no executors. And so I said, next person we hire needs to be an implementer. And they were like, okay. But I've also had a client say, we don't want to hire any more nurturers. I'm like, you're a social service agency. I think you're going to have a hard time not hiring nurturers. You just need
Kind of in
somebody
the
with a
job
little
description
more,
there.
yeah, a little more director.
Well, we've covered some great topics. This is the point where, and we didn't officially say it, everybody's doing it, but please, anybody who's out there that has a question, would like to join the discussion, you have free reign over your mute button. You can actually add the video if you'd like. That way we can see you. But we'd love to get some more back and forth with the people joining us.
Let's see if Candace's mic will work.
Well, I'll step in and just say thank you, Cami, for taking some time out to be on this call. It was great to hear from you and kind of learn about what you do and get your insight. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Cami, it's Janet. I just wanted to say thank you for what you talk about and speak about. There are a lot of issues that I'm still working on right now. So I appreciate everything you say, and it makes a lot of sense. I'm not putting my picture up there because I'm really not feeling good today. So I just wanted to let y'all know that.
All right. And Janet, that triggers something that also goes along with something Lori mentioned, and that is that every client is not in the same place when they start. And so it's really important to meet people where they are so that they can achieve success based on whatever they're dealing with, going through, or, their limitations or their strengths. Hey, Jerry, I had a client just today, and he had a big assessment of his strengths and weaknesses. And he was asking me which of his weaknesses or how could he work on those weaknesses. And I cautioned him and I said, if you focus on your weaknesses, you're only going to get to mediocre in those areas. You probably, if you're not very assertive, you're not going to get an A+ in assertiveness. So work on your weaknesses in order to get them to a point that's acceptable. But work on your strengths, because that's where your mastery lies. And if you get good mastery in several areas, your weaknesses are not going to matter. And that's been a big shift in the way that corporations look at their employees. Used to be everybody worked on their weaknesses and nobody ever got very good. And now we understand that where people's strengths, like Janet, you have a tremendous amount of kindness, okay, which is a strength that a lot of people do not share. And so I'm hoping that you have a contentment around that kindness and at least allow yourself to celebrate that aspect of your personality, regardless of any areas that you might want or need to work on.
Definitely. I agree with you, Cami. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Janet.
And Cami, we have a comment here on Facebook from Wendy Carrillo. She's a friend of ours from New Mexico, and she's just wanted to say that you're awesome, and thank you for being Wendy. Here today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So I want to talk just for a minute about choosing a coach, if that's okay.
Do it. Let's do it.
A lot of people are interested in coaching, it is an investment in yourself. And so it is important that you have a coach that you can work with. So while your coach is interviewing you to determine whether or not you're somebody that they can have success with as a coach, you want to interview them and make sure that you match. All right. If you don't like to read and that coach is going to assign you a book every week, it's probably not going to be a good coach for you. And my clients laugh at me because after the first session or two, I say, "Do you read?" And one of my clients said, "Of course I can read." I'm like, "No, I didn't ask you if you could read. I asked you if you did read." You know, and if they go, "Well," or I might say, "What's the last book you read?" And if they can't remember, then I know that's not a client that I can give reading to. I might give them a podcast to listen to. And so you want to make sure that coach can work with you. You want to make sure that coach has the ability to listen, because the greatest coaching skill is questioning, and the second greatest coaching skill is listening to the answers. And if you have a coach that talks the whole session and doesn't listen, then they probably are not going to be able to help you, because they're more about themselves than they are about you. I prefer and will typically refer to coaches who have some training. Right now, there is no training required to be a coach. And so sometimes I'll say, "Well, you know, where did you get your training?" And if they go, "Oh, I didn't, you know, I was already," no. I was actually had therapeutic training and still found coaching training a challenge as I went through it, to get all the skills and to learn all the distinctions and everything. And so it's not something that you read a couple of books and pick up. And so that I don't necessarily demand certification, because I think some of the coaching certifications are not necessarily guarantees of great coaching, but there should be some kind of a training that someone went through before you let them into your head. And then lastly, do they believe in celebration? You know, it's one thing for a coach to get you to do the things you need to do, but they also need to make sure that you get to celebrate when you do achieve those things. You know, Jim, you've made some great strides and achieved some things that I just think are celebration worthy. And so it's important that your coach makes sure that you feel that achievement all along the way, not just, okay, we set this long-term goal and we got there, but all along the way you're having some small achievements and sometimes some bigger achievements. And so if your coach isn't celebrating you, then it's going to be hard work. Mm-hmm. That's probably the four main things.
Great. That's a great point. And about the celebrating too, you know, I have a tendency to kind of play it down a little bit. So to have that person in your corner saying, let's rejoice, let's celebrate what you've accomplished. That's something that brings a lot of benefit to me, because I kind of always downplay it, or, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or, well, I didn't really do a whole lot. So that's a very important part, I think, that you brought, you know, helped me with along the way.
It's really important when you have a big goal. You know, like if you're writing a book or you're changing careers, you can't wait till you get there to celebrate. You know, you need to celebrate every 10,000 words. You need to celebrate. You know, every time you take a class or take a step successfully, you need to celebrate so that it's not all drudge.
That's great. I did see Maisie came on. Did you have something you wanted to? I saw you put your video on. Didn't know if you wanted to hop in.
Well, my child just left running away. I wanted to say this was a great call. It was nice to officially meet you, listen to you, and get to know a little bit more about you. So I really enjoyed this. I like this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Got a bunch of BNI people in here. It's like we're having a integrated meeting here with different groups. It's awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to leave it up for my recommended 5 to 8 minute moment of silence. That is extremely awkward for me. 5 seconds. 5 seconds. 8 seconds of silence to get questions out. Yeah.
And Jim, don't forget I have an offer for everybody on the call.
Yeah, I was gonna see if we had any more questions, and then we'll go ahead and do our closing here too. Yep, that's all I can take. So awesome. I counted to 5 really quickly. Man, that awkward silence kills me. So all right, we've got a lot of feedback today. It's been awesome. I'm sure that, and we have probably, I think it's 55 million people watching on Facebook Live right now. Oh, 55,301,000. So I know there's people who can see the benefit of having a coach that can help them. What are some of the best ways for them to get started? And what should their next steps be?
Thank you, Jim. Your best, I think one of the best ways to start is to look at, go online and look at coaches. You know, what are their backgrounds? People love face-to-face coaching. At least people in the South tend to. I have clients in Canada and Dubai and other places that I can't fly there every week. So when I have clients out in those areas, we do phone coaching. Now Zoom is available, so it's a little bit of an improvement. But get a sense of what that coaching world is all about. What kind of people are coaches? My typical process is that I do a 30-minute complimentary session where we talk about what you want. You get a chance to ask me questions as it relates to you and your needs. And then I give you a little bit of an example of what coaching is going to feel like. And then after that complimentary session, you have whatever time you need to determine whether you're really ready for big changes in your life, whether you're really ready for the success coaching can bring in your life. Some people are not, and that's okay. I had somebody interview me one time, and they came back like 3 years later and said, okay, I'm ready. And I'm like, for what? And they said, I'm ready to start coaching. And I'm like, are you serious? So that's probably 3 years is probably the maximum somebody has thought about it. But it's not unusual for people to think about it for 2 or 3 months and then, you know, get back to me. So I can either put or have you put my phone number in the chat box, or I can speak it out.
Yeah, whatever's best for you. I mean, David, you probably don't have it, do you?
I have it. I can just
Yeah,
drop
Cami,
it.
I'd say go ahead and let everybody know what your
Sure.
what your phone number is, and if I'll type it here in the chat as you go, and
Okay.
that way everybody.
So my phone number is 225-278-6888. And the best way to reach out to me is text. And if you send me a text and say, give me a call, then, or give me a call at 6 o'clock this evening or 3 o'clock this afternoon, then I can do that. And, but you can also email me. And my email address is Cami Miller 54@gmail.com.
All right. And do you have a special Chill with Jim offer?
Yes. Well, 30-minute complimentary session, and that will come with a special assessment.
Awesome.
To help you get started.
Well, that's great. And I know from experience, it has helped a lot in my life. And so I recommend it to all those listening, all those in the Facebook world. Reach out. If it's time, let's make it happen. Thank you, everybody, for coming out to this episode of Chill with Jim. It's been really great, a lot of fun, educational. David, you want to go ahead and touch on the topic for next week real quick?
Yeah, so next week Harley, you're going to want to come back for this. Brad, I know you're going to want to be there. We are doing an inside look at insider threats. So for those of you that don't know what the heck I'm talking about when I say that, an insider threat is someone within your organization that is a threat to your data or your systems, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, very often unintentional. So we're going to be talking about that next week, and we certainly invite everyone to come back and visit us for that. The registration is there in the chat if you'd like to go ahead and click on that registration. Carlene said the registration's not working.
Yeah, I just tested it. It's not.
All right. So we will send an email out to everyone and make sure that you have the right registration there.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Cami, for joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
For everybody else out there. And tune in next week, 2 o'clock. It's the same chill time and the same chill channel. And I really appreciate everybody coming out. We will see you next week.
Awesome.
Hey,
see you guys then.
And everybody, I posted another link there that I think will work. So if you want to jump on it right now, there it is.
Yeah, it works.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right. We look forward to seeing everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.
Thanks, Harley. Thanks, Janet.